When my daughter Amber walked into my tiny apartment last Tuesday and said those 7 words, "Mom, I need money for college," she had no idea that I'd been expecting this moment for 18 years. She had no idea that every dollar she was asking for had already been set aside, saved penny by penny from jobs she never knew I worked. She had no idea that the woman she was looking at, the one living in a cramped studio apartment with secondhand furniture, was actually far from broke. And she especially had no idea why I was about to say no. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me tell you the story of the hardest decision I ever made as a mother, and how sometimes the cruelest thing you can do is actually the kindest thing in disguise. My name is Patricia Hollis. I'm 52 years old, a former executive assistant turned freelance bookkeeper, and the mother of one daughter who hasn't spoken to me with genuine warmth in over 5 years. Amber is 24 now, living with her father, my ex-husband Marcus, in his beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs. She drives a BMW he bought her for her 21st birthday. She wears designer clothes and goes on vacation twice a year. From the outside, Amber's life looks privileged and perfect. But here's what she doesn't know. Marcus didn't build that life. I did. When Marcus and I divorced 18 years ago, Amber was 6. The divorce was ugly. Affairs, lies, financial betrayal. Marcus had been siphoning money from our joint accounts to fund his side business and his mistress. When I finally discovered it, we had almost nothing left. The house we'd bought together went into foreclosure. Our savings were gone. I was left with a mountain of debt, a first grader to raise, and an ex-husband who painted me as the villain to anyone who would listen. The custody battle was brutal. Marcus had money for expensive lawyers, money he'd stolen from us, but money nonetheless. I had a court-appointed attorney who barely knew my name. Marcus got full custody. He got our daughter. I got supervised visitation every other weekend and the label of unstable mother that I've never been able to shake. But here's what the court didn't know. I'd seen it coming. 3 months before Marcus filed for divorce, I'd discovered his affair and his financial schemes. And in those 3 months, before he could hide everything, I'd been quietly moving money. Not stealing, it was my money too, from the inheritance my mother had left me that Marcus never knew the full extent of. I opened a secret account. I transferred $180,000 into it. Money Marcus didn't know existed, money the divorce lawyers never found, money that was meant to be Amber's future. For 18 years, I've been living like I'm broke. Studio apartment, secondhand everything, no vacations, no luxuries. I worked 2 jobs through Amber's childhood, bookkeeping during the day, waitressing at night, not because I needed the money, but because I needed Marcus to believe I was struggling. I needed him to keep his guard down. I needed Amber to grow up thinking her father was the successful one, the stable one, the one who'd rescued her from her disaster of a mother. Because I had a plan. I was going to give Amber everything, but only when she was ready to receive it, only when she'd learned what it meant to work for something, to struggle, to appreciate the value of money and sacrifice. I was waiting for the moment when she'd come to me not as Marcus's spoiled princess, but as a young woman who'd hit a wall and realized she needed to change her path. I thought that moment had come last Tuesday. Amber called that morning. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Can I come by your place tonight?" My heart leaped. Amber never wanted to come to my apartment. She was always embarrassed by it, by me, by the life I lived. The fact that she was willing to visit meant something was wrong, something big enough to overcome her pride. "Of course, sweetheart. Anytime." She arrived at 7 p.m., driving the BMW that had always felt like a slap in the face, a car worth more than I'd supposedly earned in 2 years, according to the life I'd been performing. She was dressed in expensive athleisure, hair perfectly styled, nails freshly manicured. She looked like Marcus's daughter, like someone who'd never known hardship. But when she sat down on my worn couch, I saw something different in her eyes. Stress, uncertainty, maybe even a hint of desperation. "Mom, I need money for college," she said, getting straight to the point. No small talk, no "how are you," just the ask. "College?" I kept my voice neutral. "Amber, you graduated 2 years ago." "I know, but I want to go back. For my master's, MBA program at Northwestern. I got accepted." Pride swelled in my chest. Northwestern. That was a prestigious program. My daughter was smart, ambitious, capable of so much. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Congratulations. Yeah, well, I need money. The program is $120,000 for 2 years. Dad said he'd help, but he can only cover half. He said I need to figure out the rest on my own, take out loans or whatever. She said it with such disdain, like the idea of student loans was beneath her. And you want me to cover the other half? I asked quietly. Look, I know you don't have much, but maybe you could co-sign on a loan or something. Help me get approved for better terms. I'll pay you back eventually. Eventually. The word stung. Amber, why do you want to go back to school? She looked at me like it was a stupid question. Because an MBA from Northwestern opens doors, better job opportunities, higher salary. Everyone in my network is doing it. But why do you want it? What do you want to do with it? I don't know, Mom. Does it matter? It's an investment in my future. An investment of $120,000 that you want me to help you secure even though you don't know what you'll do with the degree. Her expression hardened. Why are you making this difficult? I'm asking for help. Isn't that what mothers are supposed to do? Help their daughters. Help with what exactly? You have a degree already. You have a job. A job that pays $45,000 a year. She interrupted bitterly. Do you know how little that is? Do you know how hard it is to maintain any kind of life on that salary? I looked at her designer outfit, her expensive bag, her BMW keys sitting on my coffee table. It seems like you're maintaining just fine. Because Dad helps me. Because I have to live with him to afford anything. I'm 24 years old, Mom. I should have my own place, my own life. But I can't afford it without help. This MBA would change everything. Or you could change everything by learning to live within your means. She stood up, anger flashing across her face. I should have known you'd be like this. Dad warned me not to ask you. He said you'd just lecture me about responsibility and hard work like you always do. Like your way of living is something to aspire to. She gestured around my small apartment with contempt. That hurt. It was designed to hurt, but I kept my voice calm. Amber, I've never lectured you about anything. I've barely been allowed to be part of your life for 18 years. That's your own fault. You could have fought harder in court. You could have been a better mother, but you weren't, and Dad was. He's the one who raised me, who gave me everything, who actually cared about my future. And what has all that giving taught you? I asked quietly. What have you learned from having everything handed to you? That I'm worth investing in, she shot back, something you apparently never believed. She grabbed her keys and headed for the door. My heart was breaking, but I knew this moment was critical. If I gave in now, if I just handed her the money, I'd be doing exactly what Marcus had done, teaching her that money solved problems, that she'd never have to work for anything, that people who loved her would always rescue her from her own choices. Amber, wait. She stopped at the door, hand on the knob, but didn't turn around. I have a proposition for you. I don't want to hear it. I'll pay for your MBA, the full amount, all $120,000. She turned around slowly, suspicion replacing anger. What's the catch? You work for it. You get a full-time job, whatever job you have now, or a better one if you can find it. You pay your own rent, your own expenses, your own way. No help from your father, no BMW, no safety net. You live within your means on your $45,000 salary for 1 full year. If you can do that, if you can prove to me that you understand the value of money and hard work, I'll pay for your entire MBA program in cash. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. You don't have $120,000. You're a bookkeeper who lives in a studio apartment. You'd be surprised what I have. This is insane. You're asking me to give up my entire life for a year just to prove some stupid point about struggle and sacrifice. I'm asking you to grow up, I said gently. I'm asking you to become the kind of person who deserves the opportunities I want to give you. I already deserve them. I'm your daughter. Being my daughter means you deserve my love, which you have and always will have. It doesn't mean you deserve money you haven't earned or an education you aren't ready to appreciate. She laughed, but it was a cruel sound. You're unbelievable. Dad was right about you. You're bitter and jealous, and you can't stand seeing me succeed because you never did. She left, slamming the door behind her. I sat in my quiet apartment and cried for the first time in months, but But I didn't change my mind. 3 days passed. Amber didn't call. I wasn't surprised. I knew she'd gone running back to Marcus, who would tell her I was unreasonable and cruel, who would probably offer to cover more of the tuition just to prove he was the better parent. Then on Friday afternoon, my phone rang. Marcus. Patricia, we need to talk about your little ultimatum. Hello, Marcus. What kind of game are you playing? Amber came to you for help, and you basically told her she's spoiled and needs to suffer. That's not what I said. She told me your ridiculous condition, that she has to live in poverty for a year before you'll help her. Do you realize how damaging that is? How it makes her feel like she has to earn your love? She has my love. What she needs to earn is the understanding that money isn't free and privilege isn't a birthright. Says the woman who's been living like a pauper for 2 decades. You know what I think, Patricia? I think you're punishing Amber for choosing to live with me. I think you resent her for having a good life and you want to drag her down to your level. Think whatever you want, Marcus. My offer stands. Well, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to cover the full tuition. All of it. So Amber doesn't need you or your manipulative conditions. She'll get her MBA, she'll succeed, and you'll have proven once again that you prioritize your pride over your daughter's well-being. He hung up before I could respond. I sat with the phone in my hand, feeling the weight of 18 years of sacrifice, of pretending, of planning. Was Marcus right? Was I being cruel? Was I punishing Amber for sins that weren't really hers? But then I thought about the woman Amber was becoming, entitled, ungrateful, unable to see value in anything that didn't come with a price tag, unwilling to work for anything because she'd never had to. Was that the daughter I wanted to set loose on the world with even more advantages and zero accountability? 2 weeks went by. Then, last Monday, Amber showed up at my door again. This time, she looked different. No designer clothes, just jeans and a simple shirt. No perfectly styled hair, just pulled back in a ponytail. She looked tired and younger somehow, more like the little girl I'd lost 18 years ago. Can I come in? Of course. We sat in the same spots as before, but this time she didn't launch into demands or accusations. She just sat there, fidgeting with her hands. Dad paid for my MBA, she said finally. Full tuition. I start in the fall. I heard. Congratulations. But I've been thinking about what you said, about learning the value of money and working for things. She paused. I told Dad I didn't want him to pay for it. I looked up sharply. What? I told him to keep his money, that I needed to figure this out on my own. Amber, I got a second job, bartending on weekends, and I'm moving out of Dad's house into an apartment with 2 roommates. It's small and kind of crappy, but it's mine, or a third mine anyway. She smiled weakly. Between my 2 jobs, I can save maybe $15,000 a year, so it'll take me 8 years to save enough for the MBA, maybe longer with interest rates, but I'll get there. My heart was breaking and swelling at the same time. Sweetheart, you don't have to... Yes, I do, she interrupted, because you were right. I didn't deserve it. Not yet. I've never worked for anything in my life. I've never had to sacrifice or struggle or even budget. I didn't know what things cost because I never had to pay for them myself. Do you know what my car insurance costs? I didn't. Until last week when Dad told me I'd be paying it myself now. $3,200 a year. For 1 car. That's more than some people's rent. What changed? I asked softly. What made you decide this? I was talking to Dad about his offer to pay for the MBA, and he said something that stuck with me. He said, your mother has always been unreasonable. She could have lived a better life, but she chose struggle because she's too proud to accept help. And I started thinking, what if that wasn't true? What if you weren't living in this apartment because you were broke, but because you were saving money for something? She looked around my apartment, really looked at it, maybe for the first time. This place is small, but it's clean. You have everything you need. Your furniture is old, but it's quality. You dress simply, but your clothes aren't falling apart. You're not living in poverty, Mom. You're living frugally. There's a difference. Amber ... And then I started thinking about everything else. About how you worked 2 jobs my entire childhood, but you never complained. About how you never asked Dad for more child support, even though you were entitled to it. About how every time you had visitation, you'd take me to do free things, parks, libraries, hiking, but you'd make them feel special, like adventures instead of budget options. Tears were streaming down her face now. I started thinking maybe you weren't the failure Dad always said you were. Maybe you were the one who actually understood what mattered. I couldn't hold it back anymore. Amber, I need to tell you something. I need to tell you the truth. Over the next hour, I told her everything. The secret account, the $180,000 I'd been saving since she was 6, the life I'd been performing for 18 years to protect that money from Marcus, to save it for her, to wait for the moment when she'd be ready to receive it, not as an entitled child, but as a responsible adult. I have money, I said. Enough to pay for your MBA and then some. Enough to change your life if you want it. But Amber, I wasn't going to give it to you until I knew you'd value it. Until I knew you'd become the kind of person who would use it wisely rather than waste it. She sat in stunned silence, processing everything. You've been living like this for 18 years? On purpose? To protect money you were saving for me? Yes. But why? Why not just tell me? Why not use some of it to make your own life better? Because if Marcus had known about the money, he would have found a way to take it. And if you had known about it, you would have expected it. You would have grown up knowing there was a safety net, and you never would have learned to fly on your own. So when I came here asking for money for college, I was testing you to see if you were ready, to see if you understood what you were asking for. And I failed, she whispered. You didn't fail, sweetheart. You just weren't ready yet, but you are now. She looked at me with tears pouring down her face. Mom, I'm so sorry for everything, for believing Dad's version of who you were, for treating you like you were an embarrassment, for not seeing what you were sacrificing for me. I pulled her into my arms and held her while she cried. You have nothing to apologize for. You were a child caught in the middle of your parents' war. You believed what you were told. That's not your fault. What do I do now? I pulled back and looked at her. You keep working. You keep living frugally. You keep learning what things cost and what sacrifices feel like. And when you're ready, when you've proven to yourself, not to me, that you understand the value of what you're being given, then we'll talk about the MBA money. How will I know when I'm ready? You'll know, she nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. Can I ask you something? If I hadn't come back today, if I'd just taken Dad's money and gone to school and never learned this lesson, would you have told me about the account? Eventually, I said, maybe in your will, maybe on my deathbed. But yes, you would have gotten it. Because it's yours, Amber. It's always been yours. I was just waiting for you to become the woman who could handle it wisely. That was 3 weeks ago. Amber still lives in her apartment with roommates. She still works 2 jobs. She sold the BMW and bought a used Honda. She's learning to budget, to cook, to appreciate the things she has instead of focusing on what she doesn't. We have dinner together once a week now. Real conversations, honest ones. She asks me about my life, about my work, about the years we lost. And slowly, carefully, we're rebuilding what Marcus's lies destroyed. Last week she told me she'd decided to wait on the MBA. I want to work in my field for a few years first, she said. Figure out what I actually want to specialize in. Make sure I'm going back to school for the right reasons, not just because it's what everyone else is doing. I've never been prouder. The money is still there, waiting. $180,000 plus 18 years of interest and careful investing. It's grown to almost $400,000 now, enough for her MBA and more. Enough to start a business or buy a house or whatever she decides she needs. But I'm not giving it to her yet. Not because I don't think she's ready, but because I want her to keep learning, keep growing, keep becoming the woman I always knew she could be. Sometimes the cruelest thing you can do as a parent is say no. Sometimes watching your child struggle is the most loving choice you can make. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give isn't money at all. It's the opportunity to discover their own strength. I'm 52 years old. I spent 18 years living a lie, pretending to be broke, sacrificing my own comfort, all to protect my daughter's future. Was it worth it? Every single second. Because now I have something no amount of money could buy. I have my daughter back. The real her, not Marcus's creation. And she has something too. Self-respect, resilience, and the knowledge that she can survive and thrive on her own. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments if you've ever had to make a hard choice as a parent, if you've ever sacrificed in ways your children couldn't see. Your voice matters. And remember, sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. Sometimes love looks like saying no. And sometimes the greatest inheritance you can give your children isn't money. It's the strength to live without it.